All right. And you can see the slides okay? Just triple checking.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay. Just making sure. All right. So, all right. Tonight we're going to be talking about travel and travel as a ground pounder. We're going to talk about the difference between technical and non-technical travel and talk about considerations for search rescue professionals in rigorous environments. Talk about route pace as they relate to walking techniques. Describe alternative considerations. Describe at least 3 points to consider when selecting crossing the side of a fast-moving stream or river, and discuss about traveling uphill and downhill. So it won't just be me teaching you how to walk via Zoom. I'm going to be teaching how to walk in mountains, so that's going to be cool via Zoom. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, these are the bad jokes. Go ahead and don't laugh whenever. There we go. Okay, non-technical walking, searching, getting to the searching area. What they're talking about technical stuff, just like we talk about technical rope rescue, right? That's what they're thinking of is like, hey, I need to throw a rope or have somebody literally climb this mountainside to get a rope so we can get more people up to the injured person or get access. Um, Accessing a search area, examining high risk areas, and technical rescue or alpine rescue type of things. When I say alpine rescue, I don't mean a nice little pretty hill that might be at a higher altitude than the rest of the country. I'm talking like Glacier National Park type of operations, like way up high where it's July, August, and somehow you're still in the snow. Um, Recreational, just as you would think. Traveler has total control of the destination. There's little risk. Urgency of emergency situations. And obviously, hey, if you got a bad or dangerous situation in front of you, you're going to move quick. If you don't like no ropes, and you're not a snake person and you do not like no ropes, then if you see a no rope, if you see a snake on the ground, hey, perhaps you might have a little shot of adrenaline and jump back from that snake. Other individuals who are a little more experienced around snakes, we might kind of go and be like, yeah, that's not really a threat. But nevertheless, that's a good example of motivation and walking and moving in a quick fashion. Condition is an important a part of search and rescue. You've heard that mentioned multiple times at this point throughout the course. Walking is your primary mode of transportation and search and rescue, despite what the equestrian crews might say and what certain search and rescue teams might think with all their cool ATVs and UTVs and all that stuff. Um, the real point of being a ground pounder is just that, being a ground pounder. Can review from some stuff that we've had in the past, talking about fitness, energy, water, rest, and technique. 5 things they want you to do for SAR work, and obviously that interrelates to walking and search travel. And maximum performance from SAR is only going to be a benefit from proper health, nutrition, rest, and exercise. Be mindful as a volunteer, as everyone in here is in this class is a volunteer of some way, shape, or form. We never know when a search might occur. And so if you get if you get that search right after you just worked a midnight shift at the ER or whatever work site you've been, or you've been driving a semi truck for the last 2 days and you're exhausted, you even though you might be like, I really want to go out and help because I live for this. I live to go out on searches. At a certain point, you need to stop and go. Maybe I should get some rest, and then I'll show up to the command post later in the day and see if they need some help. Yes, we need people to respond. We need people's help when callouts occur. At the same time, we need people to be in a position to properly respond and to be deployed out into the field. If everyone shows up hungover, haven't eaten in 12 hours, maybe fighting off a cold, that's going to put more people into trouble rather than getting people out of trouble. Gear, we already had that chapter on gear, right? Dress and pack and plan how you're going to dress and pack.
Yep.
Wear clothing in layers and adjust for the climate. If we're down in your neck of the woods, down in the Four Corners, I'm probably got some long sleeve shirts and stuff, but I tell you what, they're all my super lightweight stuff. And if you're up here, I'm bringing long sleeve stuff as well, but I'm bringing everything from 80 degrees to snowing on me. Preparation. So we're going to determine our best type of travel to get to whatever location we're trying to get to. Maps and experienced individuals are incredibly valuable, especially at night. You get a call out for you get yet another call out for somebody in a common area where you have issues and you get call outs to. It would be very prudent to practice doing search and rescue exercises in that area. And though you might have that old timer who's like, oh, I've grown up and I know every tree in this little state park or area that we're working in, and that's awesome. But perhaps that new 19-year-old who's just getting on with the team, maybe that individual doesn't know yet. But lean on those people who are experienced when possible. If they look at you when that long in the tooth individual looks at you and go, I know you're trying to get here, but we need to go this way, I would listen to the person long in the tooth. Plan your travel, know your route, follow your plans, and stick together. As mentioned before, SAR can occur at any given time. And so, sadly, we got to eat proper and we should maintain our physical conditioning to the best of our abilities. And again, drink plenty of water before, during, and after a mission. Ignore the monster that's sitting in my truck while I'm responding out to the call out at 2 o'clock in the morning. I assure you that is clearly water. We do some bad habits like that, but you should be making sure that you're drinking plenty of water on these missions. As we talked about in the gear section, we want to be properly clothed for what we can anticipate. If you know you're going up into the Little Belts outside of Great Falls, where even if there's no snow in Great Falls on the ground, if you go up into the Little Belts, a lot of the time you will have significant snow, and especially if you're there in January, February, March, you can expect a couple feet of snow in many places. So plan ahead of where you're going to. Your land technique is going to be based on your experience. I would see this a lot with Red Rock Search and Rescue, bless your hearts. You will have individuals who are out in, ironically enough, Red Rock State Park constantly. and we would be assigned to a search area, and those guys were mountain goats. They were up and down and up ravines and little things. Before I can turn my head, they're already on top of a giant boulder or something, and that's awesome and that's great. But then I'll occasionally have someone like not to pick on him, but you have somebody like a soccer mom type of individual who just got onto the team, who, hey, now she's trying to get into this, but maybe she doesn't have the same level of experience as my little 20-year-old mountain goat in some of these parts or in certain types of terrain. And so just be mindful of that. Just because you have someone who is a little less skilled or experienced in a certain type of terrain and is slowing down your little strike team as it's searching a given area or trying to get to a person, uh, don't don't get too frustrated with that, because that's going to happen regardless of your situation, right? Unless that individual shouldn't be out in the field in the first place, right? You're always going to have someone who's slightly better, and you're always going to have someone slightly slower. You're going to have somebody who might be, hey, he looks like he's on SEAL Team 23, but maybe he busted his knee and now he's not working on all cylinders like he normally is, right? Just be mindful of people's strengths and limitations while you're going out there and while you're searching as a team. When trying to find exact route, KISS is a great acronym. Keep it simple, stupid. And I highly encourage everybody to live by that mantra. So if there is okay, let's take the sluice boxes outside of Great Falls State Park area. There's a first parking lot area, and it is very flat. And let's say there's this one spot I got in mind. If we need to get into the middle of the park, there's two ways we can go. We can go from the higher parking lot spot, which is literally in elevation. And to start there, you start at elevation, and then it eventually drops you down into kind of a ravine, mini canyon type area. And that might be great to get into that area that I mentioned before, because there's really only one way in and one way out. Let's say you find your individual. Yay. That's awesome. You got your route in there. We got our person. Oh, they got a messed up ankle, so we got to carry them out. No problem. And now you have two choices. I can either go up all the madness that I just came down, or perhaps I just follow the trail that stays on the flat stuff and takes me to the other parking lot. Sure, you as a searcher might need to get a ride to go the half mile up the hill back to your car after everything's said and done, but that might be the smarter route. And curved routes might be easier and faster than a straight path. So as you can see here, going up or down the hillside, you have your switchbacks and various terrains. And over here in, I would say, your Four Corners, Nevada kind of a region, hey, you got some pools of water. It's probably early spring. Going around it, going side to side and working around it might be a better path than obviously just going straight through a bunch of terrain. So just because you need to go from point A to point B doesn't mean you can't go to point C, doesn't mean you can't go around. Years ago, perfect example. Years ago, I was teaching at the National Emergency Services Academy as a teenager, as a 18-year-old teenager back in Indiana, and we got tasked, hey, we need everybody to get all your teams to point B. Okay. Well, there's this huge field that's just straight up brush and brush to your, head height and higher. And I know I'm not that very tall guy, but some of that brush was 6 feet plus. And I'm like, well, that doesn't look fun. And I double checked my instructions and I asked them, like, hey, we just need to get over there, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. Hey, we're going this way. Everyone went straight through the field. I think one other team kind of saw what we did and actually followed us. The rest of us, we went to the outskirt of the field and we walked along the road. We got to where we needed to in about 15 minutes, got to the end, and we were chilling out for 30 minutes while everyone else was killing themselves going through 6 feet of brush. And the other instructors that were there were like, okay, how was that? Oh, that was rough and all that stuff. Why didn't you walk around like Team 4 did? What? We could do that? Like, they did it. We just said to get to point B. We didn't tell you how to get there. So just because you need to get to point B doesn't mean that you need to go in a straight line. Traveling by altimeter, especially at night, can be an extremely valuable tool if you're trying to do a contour search on the side of a mountain and you want to make sure that you're not going higher or low or you're staying on track. Have your GPS out, and let's say you're at 1,420 feet. I'm like, cool, all right, let's stay within that area plus or minus 5 feet. And let's just try to do that the best we can. Game trails, roads, man-made trails, obviously quicker than just bushwhacking it. So always take those when possible, unless you're assigned to search that area for those factors. And as I mentioned, taking that longer but sometimes quicker and easier route is always favorable. Pace and rest are critical to travel. You want to maintain a realistic pace. This helps you with maintaining your body temperature by reducing without making it go too hot, or when it's really cold outside, you're getting too hot. Now you're getting wet because you're sweating, and now you're getting cold again. So just maintaining a stable temperature is key. Moderate realistic pace, especially at high altitudes. If you are not normally used to working at altitude, it can kick you in the butt, and it does not take very much. Up here in Montana, I think we're at about 3,500 feet in Great Falls, and we're in the flats. We're just high plateau in the northern plains. And I'll get visitors and stuff, or I'll be here in my pulse ox throughout the year, despite me living here for almost 10 years now and coming to Montana for over 20. My pulse ox will sometimes read routinely 93, 94%, regardless. And then as soon as I go and visit the family members on one of the coasts or something like that, and I'm at sea level, my pulse ox immediately jumps up to 100%, and it's absolutely wild to see that.
Does that have you seen it affect more people when they got to go from higher to lower elevation?
You will have the opposite effect,
Okay.
which is awesome. So same idea. When I went and visited family members, I went from just being, hey, cool, I got energy stuff, to all of a sudden I didn't want to take naps. I had all this energy. I'm like, let's go, go, go. And my family members are like, what is wrong with you? um, I I was stationed in Las Vegas, Nevada, when I got the opportunity to go to the Army Airborne School, which is at Fort Benning. And Vegas is at a high desert plateau. That's why it snows practically every year in Vegas. And everyone's like, but it's Las Vegas, it's so hot. And I'm like, yeah, but we're high desert. And I went from there to Fort Benning, Georgia, which is went from like 2,000 something feet to like, I think Fort Benning's at like 300 feet above sea level. And I was just flying when I was doing my runs and stuff. So you can have some short-term little perks going from high altitude back down to a lower altitude,
Okay.
which is really cool to see. And again, pace, govern your pace by the slowest individual in your group, and do not rag on that person because they're doing that. I will tell my young 18, 19-year-old bucks on the fire truck who are trying to run, 4 stairs and full fire gear and all this stuff and trying to do races and stuff. So I'm like, that's cute. And they're like, oh, you're gonna do it? I'm like, oh, I'll go up and down the stairs, but I got one speed. I got two speeds on and off. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, at this point, I got one speed. It's a constant pace. I'm pacing myself for the long game. And I look at them and I'm like, no, like when you get those a proper structure fire, right? Or you get that proper wildland one and you're grunting in with gear and stuff. It's like it's I keep one speed whenever possible just to maintain long endurance. And it's not as fast as the 19-year-olds. Let me warn you about that. Rhythmic breathing can help reduce headaches, nausea. If you're holding a breath all the time, especially at altitude, that's going to cause issues. And yeah, make sure you breathe. It's kind of crazy how that can help. Um, Speaking of breathing, let me ask, you got wilderness first aid already, right?
Say that again?
You got a wilderness first aid certification or higher, right? If I
Yes.
recall. Okay, so let me ponder this question, madam. Um, somebody's at oh, okay. So how much oxygen is at sea level? Like percentage. Did you guys cover this?
Um, uh, was it in the 20% or something?
Yep, 21%, right? Plus,
Okay.
plus or minus a tenth of a percent, but we'll call it 21%. Okay. How much oxygen is on top of Mount Everest? And yes, it's a trick question.
Um, I don't know because everybody has
Mm-hmm.
difficulty getting up it.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about that real quick. And I promise not to drag this out, but this is good stuff to know. Everyone jumps up and down when I usually ask that question. They're like, oh, it's less. It's got to be like 16% or 12%. And I just shake my head and I shake my head. And I'm like, no, no. And they're like, what is it? And I go, it's 21%. And everyone's like, no, no, but the air's thinner up there. I'm like, no, that's how us as simple-minded humans have explained that to the general public. What gets you is not that there's less oxygen up there, it's the air pressure. So your air pressure gets less as you go up in altitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we have to have the jetliners. They're all pressurized cabins because of that. When you go above usually about 10,000 feet, that's usually about the point where the body starts having issues absorbing oxygen at different rates. And so it's not that there's not less of it in the air, it's the fact that our bodies can't absorb and process it differently. And that's why when you watch like the documentary 14 Peaks and those guys who were born and raised in the Andes and those guys do stuff without oxygen and climb Mount Everest and stuff. And they're like, how can they do it? It's genetics. Their bodies have gotten more efficient at absorbing oxygen at lower pressure. And when they have done a number of researches and science experiments and stuff. They'll take those guys and then go put them at sea level, and those guys are like on fire. They're like supercharged because their bodies are able to process that so much more efficiently. So just some cool wilderness first aid knowledge there. So it's all about air pressure and your ability to process the oxygen rather than the lack of it. We just have people that breathe in oxygen just like we give a patient who has, like, let's say a really bad pneumonia or something like that. We throw oxygen on them. It's not that there's less oxygen in the air, but they're not able to process it that much. So here, we're going to give you an extra boost. You're not processing oxygen as much, so we're going to supercharge the oxygen you're breathing so you can get more into it into your body.
Hmm. Okay.
So that helps with from the medical condition side of things and also working at altitude. Um, Fatigue in SAR environments can be extremely dangerous, especially if you are working with heavy equipment, aircraft, those kind of things. Traditionally, search and rescue air crews are held to extremely strict crew rest cycles. If Thomas was in the class tonight, I'm sure he can elaborate more. When the wildland crews go out and they get released, they no longer are allowed to drive home the same day, without very few exceptions, uh, because crews were like, "Hey, we've been on the line for 14 days. Cool. All right, we're all done. We're at the thing. We're done with our 14 days. We're gonna go home. Peace out." And they were jumping into the car or into the little crew vehicles and were driving home, and they kept getting into accidents because drivers kept falling asleep. So now they are required to have, I think it's like at least 6 hours downtime before they're allowed to get on the road. Rest stop, just as it kind of explains, if you're in difficult terrain and you're burning off a bunch of energy, sometimes you can take 5 steps. Sometimes, hey, you're taking a step and we're catching our breath because it's just that rough of terrain. The question I would also say, what's one thing that we should be constantly reevaluating? Do you remember?
Uh, I don't remember.
Okay, we want to constantly reevaluate our situational awareness, right?
Yeah.
So if we got tasks, let's say we're team two, hey guys, go check this cliffside over here, and we're trying to see if the person got up here, whatever, right? And we're trying to climb it, and if this climb is kicking our butt, the two questions becomes, if it's kicking our butt this bad, one, did our individual actually bother to come up here? And two, should we be up here? Now, sometimes that answer is yes, they did go up there. Oh, hey, they went to go do an alpine cert or alpine climb to the top of a mountain and they were being billy goats. That's a realistic possibility. But in other times, um, what the command post thinks from a map saying, "Hey, this looks a good area. Can you go ahead and search this grid over here?" Is just mindful of like, "Hey, is our subject a billy goat, and should we really be searching or climbing this part of the mountain right now if we're having so much difficulty?" The answer to that is sometimes yes, we still need to be doing that, and other times maybe we should back out. So just something to bring up with your situational awareness. Just because you commit yourself to searching an area and you, especially many times, you have never been to that area before, and you get boots on the ground to that searcher and you realize, oh, this is not what the map advertised.
This is kind of it's it's good info because um we had a search out on Hopi Navajo Reservation. I've never been in this area,
Yeah,
but the elderly man we were looking for was partially blind, can't hear, had bad legs because he's diabetic.
sure.
So us hearing that information, especially law enforcement, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna find him in no time."
Yeah,
We're like, "Well, we should be able to find him because of his condition." But when you talk to family, so he's partially blind, but he can see probably 3 feet ahead of him. He could see
Sure.
that. And so, but when I talked to the family, they told me the same info, but they said, they're like, all he does is walk around, and they're like, he can walk. So I asked him, I'm like, so on a good day, I said, sunny, sunshine, and everything, how far could he walk? And they said, probably almost 6 to 7 miles. I was like, oh, damn.
Yep.
But this area we're in is just the terrain was nuts, but he knew his way around. And but the officers said, no, 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 he's got to be over here, because we found his footprints. I'm like, I know, but it's still close. So then we focused on, I was like, well, the family said he visits his relatives in the area, but each house where they live is like 6 miles away from his house. So I kept telling them, I'm like, he was probably on his way to one of the houses. I said, so we should focus near the houses. But they kept saying, no, he couldn't have made it that far from his house. But guess where he was at? He was actually found a mile from one of the houses he was headed to. So he made it 5 miles.
Yep.
So yeah.
100%. 100%. And just because of age and all that, um, a search that I monitored, I was working at the ambulance company in Missoula when this happened. I had just gotten on with the ambulance company. I hadn't been on the SAR team yet. And this one I will always remember because I was following it and I followed it when they found the individual. Individual, mid to upper 70s, a former retired college professor from the University of Montana. I believe he taught forestry. I think he might have been an ex-smoke jumper. But this guy would go up this big side of a mountain in Missoula. I mean, practically in town, this massive mountain. And he would go hiking every day. Every day he went out with a book. He would go hiking and he would go with his dog. And the problem is he never stayed on trail. He'd been there all his life, so he always knew where he was at, whatnot, but he never stayed on trail. He would go to spots, he would go to low quiet places, he would read his book, he would do art, he would do all these things. When they found him, and the description in the CAD, which is computer aided dispatch, I was working on the ambulance, but I was able to see the CAD notes. And I get like almost emotional because I, I don't want to die tomorrow, but if I died like this, I would be okay with it. Which is he was located next to a tree. His back was next to a tree, and from all intents and purposes, it looked like that he was reading his book, he took a nap, and he didn't wake up. And his dog stayed with him overnight and did not leave his side. And he was looking over, and he was high, from the description, he was way high up on the mountainside, way up in the tree line, and he's just looking over this amazing valley. And I'm just like, just all the trees. He wasn't even looking at the city side, and I'm like, oh man, like I don't want to die tomorrow, but yeah, that's okay. That's the way I wouldn't mind going. And but they search and search and search, and they had a ton of resources out there and didn't find him for I think about 36 hours.
Wow.
And he was really just slightly off trail, but because of that, and they're like, oh, he's not that bad. Oh no, he was a freaking billy goat. He was way up there.
Yeah. Wow.
But so just be mindful of our search subjects that we're going for. Um, Rest up, as you can see here, this is going to be your alpine guys. This guy is using an ice axe as a crutch or a climbing stick. So the technique is slow. Typically, you're in heavy snow. You're trying to compact the snow to kind of get you almost like you're making your own steps, your own stairs up the mountain. And a lot of times you're taking a step, taking a step up, you're taking a breath. Okay, next one, you're pumping the ground down to get a better footing, and you're repeating the process. This is very slow. This is not what you might be very careful on. If you're working in this type of terrain, just be very mindful who you're sitting out here. These are the guys that, hey, you know what? It kicked our butt getting up here all night. We're gonna, even if the rest of the team found the person and be like, hey, you know what? It's getting dark. We're gonna say it's too You guys can't get a helicopter rest. Screw it. We're just gonna camp here overnight, eat some MREs, make a fire, and we'll come down next in the next morning. That's one of those rare scenarios where like, hey, we're taking all of our gear because we might be out there overnight kind of scenarios. Okay. Other considerations, like I was mentioned before about my young firefighters, a lot of them will just go, I'm young, dumb, and I'll save the last comment, but young and dumb, and they're trying to go as fast as they can everywhere, and it's like, guys, calm down. You got This is a marathon. This isn't a speed race. Especially when you're excited and you got adrenaline. It's your first search, and you have a viable search. You know that you're not working a recovery for sure. There's a very high probability we might have someone who's actually alive, and this is workable. That really changes your search dynamics. Pace should be by your slowest traveler. Ideally, put them up front. If they're not great with land navigation and whatnot, then fine, put them up front. And the person immediately behind them is typically your team leader or the person who's really good at navigation, if that's your point person, right? And then they can be right there and be like, hey, go left, go right, hey, go up this way. But that way you're staying together and you're not just losing the person in the dust, because that's exactly how search and rescue events occur in the first place. Oh, well, we went for a hike to Bob's cabin out here. Okay. And well, Sally was a little slow. She said, go ahead, I'll catch up. My knee's just bothering me. And we get there and we have lunch and we're there for a couple hours. Realize she hadn't been up here yet. Go back down the trail and she's gone. We have no idea what happened to her. Okay. Stick together. Space between searchers are important. Depending on the type of trail that you're on. If you're on an extremely narrow trail, if you're on a very steep terrain, make sure you're kind of keeping. I mentioned Jeff was talking about keeping together, but at the same time, you don't want to be on top of each other. Because let's say Sally's up ahead of me and I'm way too close to her, she trips, she starts to slide down the hill. Instead of me catching her, now she's knocking me down, and now we're both falling down the hill. Um, if you're on flat terrain, that's a different scenario, but just something to consider depending on what type of terrain you're in. Be mindful of your distances between our searchers for safety wise, as well as your search ability to be able to search between each other and effectively. Downhill travel, usually less fatiguing. Be mindful of toe jams, um, especially in higher terrain, steeper angles and whatnot. I will make my own crisscross. Um, and instead of going straight down, even though I might have climbed uphill going straight up, I'm going to go side to side to kind of break that momentum up so I don't fall on my front face and I keep going down the hill. And in situations like that, an advanced skill to do, which we cover in SARTEC 1 or Advanced Search and Rescue. We actually talk about setting up a rope line and various techniques to get down from an area. And perhaps you need to do that from getting down from a high mountain, or perhaps you need this to help you to safely get down into a ravine or a wash that is particularly steep. Um, and so things to be mindful of for later for advanced skills. Be mindful of knees. I If I'm going out on a search whenever possible, I try to always have a spare knee brace with me. So I always have my knee in a brace. I was working out not too long ago. My fitness coach that was working with me was like, "Oh, you're injured," and I'm like, "Dude, it's a precautionary thing. I'm wearing the knee brace because I'm trying to get support and I'm trying to prevent injuries, not cause more. But if you do use a knee brace, make sure it's comfortable to you and you can use it over long miles. So for the most part, I use slip-on type of knee braces because any of the strap-on ones, the straps tend to dig into me, and then now I start to get blisters and I start having a bad day. But use what best works for you. Just get some practice in it before next thing you know, you're in the middle of a search and you're telling everyone, "Hold on, I gotta drop my pants so I can take my knee brace off because this is causing me issues."
So are you using one brace or two?
I just use one, just my right knee.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not. Luckily, knock on wood, I'm not that broken. I need to use a brace on each knee yet. It's just the right one's got some old work athletic injuries, so I got to be mindful of that. Walking sticks, absolutely great for support. A lot of the times I'll use one. It is not uncommon for a lot of people to have two hiking sticks with them. Some places, hey, I would use it in this terrain. Maybe you're in a flat area and you're going to be in a flat area for a while. There's absolutely no reason why you can't put it up in your pack, but if you want to, they're pretty easy to stow away when you need to. Big takeaway from this is if you do use or invest into hiking sticks, which I do recommend, the next PowerPoint is talking actually about tracking. What's nice about that, if you work around helicopters a lot, these are nice so that you can break them down so you're not having issues with a giant walking staff, Gandalf walking staff, and trying to get that into a helicopter. On the flip side, some people prefer those giant Gandalf walking sticks, and they do have their own purposes, and that's going to be a personal preference, but options and things to think about. Good important rules. Keep your weight directly over your feet. If you're like, hey, we're doing the big search and we're gonna take a whole bunch of gear because we're gonna set up a base camp a couple miles into this wilderness area and then we're gonna go searching. Make sure that your gear that's on your pack, you're not taking too much gear and it's not too further back because if it's pulling you backwards, it's going to burn your energy very rapidly and it's going to throw off your center of balance, which can cause issues. Avoid descents that are too steep. Do it all the time where I'll be going downhill and I realize, well, that's kind of a bad spot. So I'm going to move myself 3 feet to the right to a easier incline or deer trail or something like that to get down from wherever I'm at. Trails can be highways to barely visible. Here in probably the next month or so, in about the next 6 weeks, there'll be a point up here in Montana with all the spring rains and everything, and all of the game trails are going to be overgrown and they're going to be really difficult to identify for about 3 weeks before the animals start using them again and knocking on the grass. The nice part about those conditions is then you can more easily tell when a human or somebody has gone through that area. But if you're trying to utilize the game trails to get from point A to point B, some of them might be a little less visible. And then like it says here, hey, use trails of less resistance. Keep it simple. If this trail is really kicking everyone's butt for some reason, again, reevaluate. Hey, should we be here? Is there a better way for us to do this? Just because the command post said, hey, we want you to go from point A to point B up this trail because they're looking and hey, that makes the most sense. Maybe they weren't paying attention to the map. Maybe they didn't realize that, a few weeks prior, part of the trail got washed out, and now, hey, this is really impractical to use. We need to go a different way. Trails likely spot for clues, especially if you're following elder individuals, and like you said, you got always the exceptions to the rules. And just because they're long in the tooth doesn't mean that they won't go far. But I suspect that they're going to follow the trail if I had a choice, right? For the exception of my professor guy that was very specific and that was known. If I didn't know anything about my person other than he's mid 70s individual and likes walking and hiking, and if they're like, does he normally stay on trails? I'm like, yeah, I think so. I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna roll dice and hope he stayed on a trail. And if I'm on a trail that's getting really, really, really difficult for me or some of the younger guys, I might look at, okay, can my person actually gotten up here? And those are things to reevaluate. The loosen laces trick on flat ground, they're just trying to make sure that your feet can breathe a little bit easier. That's where that one's coming from. If you need to rest on a very narrow trail, try to get off to the side so others can pass, especially if you got horses. For my canine individuals, if you see horses or pack oats or something like that coming up the trail, just get off the trail. Call your dog to you if they're actively searching or they're not on the leash at that moment. And I'll just get off to the side, put them in a down, and just let them chill out. Give them some water and let the critters pass you. And be mindful of them, especially if they're known to have the potential to spook horses and various other animals as well. Rush, like I was talking about before, we want to get through it fairly quickly or to go around it. If you're searching in Arizona, and I would see this in the early days of Red Rock, there would be like a big old cactus bush kind of thing, and somebody's like trying to check in all the crevices of this cactus, and I'm like, think about what we're looking for. If you don't see it by now, I don't think they dived headfirst into a cactus. If they accidentally ran into the cactus, I don't think they got that far. And if they're running issues with that cactus, maybe we just go around. Gullies and drainages are great, and in our next PowerPoint, we'll talk about sand traps and tracking traps. With some skill, when you get into the world of tracking and trailing, as a human searcher, you can sometimes tell when somebody has gone through. You can see disturbances, and all that is just becoming aware of nature. And that's part of the reason why I love wilderness search and rescue operations. Is hey, when I go out for a hike, um, I'm becoming more in tune with nature. On the downside, I remember somebody mentioned me when I was getting involved, and they're like, search and rescue will ruin hiking for you for the rest of your life. Because now every time that you go out to a nice, pretty family hike with the kids, you're like, oh, there's tracks. And now you're automatically brain are catching on to tracks and disturbances and clues. And now you're spotting trash that people are like, oh, I didn't see that there. And your brain is automatically catching this. And some people are like, oh man, I just can't enjoy hiking like I used to because I'm seeing all this stuff that I didn't used to see. Grassy slopes, careful underfooting, especially if it's a wet from rain or dew. When descending, traverse along the slope, excuse me. And it's especially when wet is a really good way to see signs of travel in grass. Talus and screen slopes, sometimes called rock falls. They're usually along the edges and cliffs up in Montana. Usually, this is a sign of a large avalanche that happened in the wintertime. It actually pulled all the trees and things and then the ground. And this is just reminding you, hey, be careful of rough terrain. Okay, streams and rivers. If that is a hazard in your area, try to complete a swiftwater awareness training. Either your team goes over for a couple hours and does some practice, or a more formal class. Streams and rivers can be extremely dangerous, which is possibly why you're there in the first place. As now you're trying to traverse and cross this stream or river that we think that some individual got caught on. So always be mindful if the individual got into trouble in the same place that you are now traversing and coming through, you are now in that hazard as well. So talk to yourself, talk to your teams of, okay, how are we going to do this differently so we don't get into trouble? If you have significant moving water, you want to cross at a 45-degree angle facing downstream. This might seem common knowledge to some, but do you know why we want to be facing downstream than upstream?
Um, why?
um, so that we're not fighting with the stream. We're not putting more effort to go upstream, right? We're using the
Okay.
stream to kind of push us forward, and we're going with the ease of travel. And then in the more swiftwater operations and technician level, they'll actually talk to you about, well, if you fall in, you never go directly to shore. Or people always what people do because they panic. And now if you watch the screen, right, if the stream's going like this and everyone's like, no, I gotta swim back to mom. And so now they're trying to fight and swim the stream or fast moving stream or river, and they're trying to swim upstream against a current, not towards the shore. And then they get tired and then they get into a whole lot of trouble at that point. They're like, nah, if you fall in, who cares? Ah, that sucks. Face down 45 degrees towards the other shore that you were trying to go to and just keep swimming. And the stream is just going to push you over. And in very short time, you're going to run into the other shore and you're not going to be that tired. You might be wet, you might be cold, you might got your wind kicked out of you, but you're going to be on the other shore and you're not going to be drowning or in a worse condition than you started. So that's why when crossing, we try to stay at a 45-degree angle when walking and crossing. So if anything bad happens, um, we can easily go to that as a self-rescue method, or B, it's also going to be a lot easier to go with the stream facing down and going towards that shore that we want to go to than, hey, we're going strictly across and fighting with the pressure that's just going to keep pushing us, or going upstreams and we're just absolutely fighting with it. If you have canines, and depending on the type of stream that you are crossing, um, depending on if it's a stream or river and those dynamics in those larger bodies of water, you should probably have your canine already working in a life vest. Even if like, oh no, I have a black lab and my dog is a freaking half fish. And I'm like, I get that, but just like how these guys in the photo over here, they're all in helmets and they're all wearing, it's hard to see, but they're all wearing life jackets right now and they might be really good swimmers. They're wearing life jackets for a reason. If you're working around that hazard, do something to avoid that hazard. If the creek's only 2 inches deep and there isn't that huge of a threat, okay, maybe I not, I have the life jacket off, but I have it with me. But if it's that more rapidly moving water, my dog should be in a life jacket as well. Um, Try to get one that's got a handle. So if you're crossing or when you cross, you can try to assist your dog, especially if you got a short healer mix like my little guy. He looks like he's a border collie healer mix, and he's a border collie with short legs and crossing streams and whatnot. He's gotten the hang of it, but that is not his favorite thing in the world. And half the time, he's trying to bite and hold on to me while I'm trying to hold on to him to throw him over to the other shore when I need to. But stuff to be mindful of and consider when you're trying to cross the stream. Have a plan. Find the best way to cross. If you got a whole bunch of gear on your pack, maybe you shouldn't be playing leapfrog and going from rock to rock to rock. Maybe that's not the best one. Maybe your best method is, hey, instead of playing leapfrog and then having the greater possibility of slipping on the rocks, and now you're slipping on a rock like you're in a cartoon, and now you're heading into your whole body's in the stream. Maybe, hey, we're just going to go cross this either individually or, as you can see here, as a team. What they're doing over here is a stream crossing as a team for swiftwater technician kind of work, and they're using it to they're block using the first guy to block the river, and they're step together, and everyone in the back is basically pushing that person forward and making sure that nobody falls. They can also use other techniques such as hiking sticks or oars. Get used a lot too, just as a means to have more points of contact. Um, if you are going through something that is a little more swift, make sure to unfasten weight straps and shoulder straps. Make sure that anything that could potentially pull you down does not. As much as I don't want to lose my really cool gear, at the same time, I don't want to be dragged down into the water because of it. And I mentioned before, poke with the axe or a stick in front of you. Use as a tripod stance if you have significant amount of force of a stream or river that you're trying to cross. They're saying don't tie a rope around your crosser with the mentality that if you are not trained in swiftwater rescue and you do that, there's a high probability that either A, the person's going to get thrown into the water, and now that person is just going to be dragged into the stream to the fast moving part of the water, and they're just going to get held underneath the water if you're not careful. Then if let's say worst case scenario, oh my goodness, we're gonna cut him free or let go of the rope. You do that, now he goes downstream, he or she goes downstream, and now that rope gets caught on an object, like a tree or a log or something like that. And now again, he's dangling on the jet end of the downstream of the river or the stream that you're trying to cross, and now a bad situation just became a whole lot worse. Fast moving water, place your feet downstream, lie on your back. This is if you got thrown into the water. Ditch your pack. You're trying to put your feet downstream so that if dash when you run into a rock, it's your feet and not your head or something else that's important. And then use your hands and whatever else you got and swim like crazy to shore. Again, out of 45 at that point, does not matter which shore it is as long as it's a 45 to a shore. You can always walk back upstream to mom or the rest of your search crew, but go at a 45. Don't, whatever you do, try not to attempt to stand up or anything like that. That is going to cause issues. That will throw you into the water. You can break your leg, your ankle, if it's moving with enough force, and potentially then, oh, hey, now your foot's stuck and now you're being held underneath water face forward, even in a life jacket. So let's not do that. My recommendation, if you're not trained to be around fast moving water is don't do it. Doesn't mean that we can't search along the shore, but just acknowledge, hey, we're not going to cross this. Desert travel. Water's your big one. I usually travel fairly light in desert environments. I'll still wear long sleeve shirts to prevent sunburns because of my North European Scottish ancestry going on here in my partly gender hair color. I get prone to sunburns, especially as I get older. And also wearing long sleeve shirts, as you probably know, will actually help retain body moisture on the skin. And as much as you're like, oh, you might be sweating, it's actually in the long run helping you keep cool and keep you from being dehydrated. Compasses are important in any times that you're working in flat terrain with lack of landmarks, and then you can use landmarks to kind of manage where you are. Systems can be very deceptive, particularly in deserts, plains. They're like, oh, that's just a few miles down the road. No, that's 50 miles away. As the saying goes, just one more ridge. Just one more ridge. We just need to climb one more ridge. And it's always one more ridge, one more hill. Three types of deserts for the Nasar book: mountainous, rocky plateau, which would be more of that absolutely be Las Vegas. Las Vegas is actually it's in a valley, but it's a actually in a rocky plateau, um, technically, and then sandy and dune type features. Be mindful of heat stress. Those of you who are used to working in deserts are probably much more applicable to knowing your own heat stress and your abilities. Pacing, waters, and electrolytes. Those are your friends. Okay, jungle environments, especially like down in Florida and Georgia and those kind of places. Rivers, trails, and ridgelines are going to be your friends. Hazards can come from all over the place. If you're in Australia, everything is trying to kill you. If you're in South America, everything's trying to kill you. And if you're in Florida, everything's trying to kill you. Take your time. Don't hurry. Observe your surroundings. Absolutely wear gloves and be fully covered because of the amount of potential of bugs and critters and reptiles that might latch out of you. Try to keep yourself protected, especially if you're going bushwhacking. Quicksand can be super annoying. It's not always, we think of quicksand as always, yeah, it's a particular phenomenon that happens in deserts. At the same time, as you can see here, this could be easily up along one of the creeks or riverbeds up by Browning up here in Montana, or especially along the Missouri. You just got this area where the water level has recently rescinded and it looks all nice and hard and stable. You take a couple steps, and next thing you know, you are up to your knee in mud that is creating a suction, and you take a step and you just lost your boot. If you are in legit quicksand, though, you want to spread your body out as much as possible to displace your weight and prevent it from sinking. Um, how you truly get into trouble with quicksand is, one, you're moving and it's moving all the sand around, and two, you have all your weight pinpointed into your feet where you're standing, and that that slowly works you further and further and further into the sand. And this is saying if you do really get into trouble, you can try to use a swimming motion to kind of work your way to the edge. I would also say, from an ice rescue standpoint, I haven't tried it in quicksand, but my probably go to would be if you can get your body flat on top of the quicksand, I would actually roll your body and do like an alligator log roll and just keep doing that until you can get to proper hard ground. Snow. As many of us know, especially since majority of the class is from Montana, hey, you can lose dexterity, chlorination, lack of landmarks. Things can get really confusing depending on conditions. Images can get distorted, especially if you haven't worked at an area before. Okay, if you guys are working on a big search up in Glacier and you're trying to get the poor tourists down, run into whiteout conditions. With the amount of snow and all the light gets all deformed, and so then everything just blends in together. Having sunglasses or glasses with the amber or different color tints can help you get through some of that a little bit. Your depth perception gets all out of whack, as many of us know. So just be mindful of that and make sure you have the extra equipment to operate in those type of environments. And as we were talking about survival and stuff in cold environments and deep snow conditions, you're going to be burning a lot more energy to get through those conditions. And in the cold, you're going to be burning extra energy on top of that. Ice axes, I've seen them. I've never had the opportunity to use one properly. They're using in mountaineering conditions, mountain rescue association type of certifications. Cool, awesome. Know that they exist. Most of us ground pounders will probably not touch any of this unless you start to get into some of those specialty conditions and certifications. Typically, you're going to use that in severe terrain. Use of an X. This is showing somebody on a mountain and they start to slip on the snowy hill or mountain or whatever. And they're like, oh, hey, I'm just going to lean in to the snow and hopefully it's just going to catch and hold my body and prevent me from rolling downhill for a half mile. And that's showing your movie theater quality braking and dealing with a potential fall because you're doing a rescue on a mountaineering condition. Once you got it placed, you kind of want to use your feet to kind of kick into the snow and into the mountain to kind of give you extra points of contact so you're kind of stable from there. And from that point, you can use your feet and again, kind of that stepping motion that we saw earlier with the step rest. You're going to kind of do that to kind of dig your feet into the side of the mountain, take a step, bring you up a couple inches, repeat the process, and slowly make your way up the mountain. Hopefully, at that point, your friends and colleagues have gotten to you and potentially assist you to get back up to where you need to be. This is saying that for whatever reason you fall on your back, try to grasp the axe and hold the pink, um, the spiky end, and then roll onto your belly with your feet facing downhill, because again, just like the swift water kind of conditions, if you run into a tree or a rock or something like that, rather have you hurt or break your a foot or a leg than your head. And whatever you do, try to hold on to that axe at all necessity. And there's that crazy action of trying to get things to stop. Snowshoes, they spread your weight on in heavy snow where you have a lot of powder. Gentle slopes, you can actually climb straight uphill. On steeper, you're going to have to traverse um, going on to kind of side by side like just a normal hiking style. The snowshoes themselves, this part under here, um, again, spreading out your weight, and typically there are a number of spikes underneath here. So as you're going, it's grabbing onto the mountain. Typically, individuals use one or two ski poles additionally while using these, especially if they're taking heavy loads. And if you're traversing or working in an area like this, your team should be kind of working single file. So as each individual is taking their steps, you're building a trail that then you can use to come on down. And that's why you try to stay in that single file. So if you're the first guy and you're trailblazing, okay, you're gonna have it a whole lot harder than the last person in the team, but ideally then that last person in the team isn't having to work so hard. And then you get to take that trail back further on down without a whole lot of trouble that you did going back up in the first place. And in extremely steep conditions, consider a side step to spread out your weight. Plunge stepping, if you don't have your snowshoes, I have done this not just in snowy conditions, but steep conditions with some soft ground. You dig your heel in and try to make your own set of stairs. And side step, similar to situations with skiing at times, you're using your shoe to help get you down a steep hill safely by digging into the mountain in the soft ground. And this is just seeing, I think this is, again, very advanced kind of mountain rescue stuff, but using an ice pick and a rope, you could help lower either equipment or a partner down the hill. Crampons, very popular up here in Montana, can be very useful, especially if you're searching along waterways where you have a lot of ice. Balance climbing, typically used for rock climbing type of faces of rocks and bouldering. They have it in here, but I would be mindful of if you go down this route, you should really have specialized training if you start to do anything significant of this type of terrain or type of operations. And similar to like how we don't want our canines to have booties when working proper debris piles, we do not want humans to be wearing gloves while trying to rock climb, because the gloves, despite our best interests, don't have the same dexterity, and you can grip on to things a lot differently than if you have gloves on. And it's talking about body position for rock climbing. Type of holds, just know that they exist. This is saying if there's like an odd shape rock slab or something that you're trying to go up or downhill, I would still continue to go a sidestep motion. It's just saying that hey, if you go point your downhill foot slightly downhill, it will help you. And consider lowering your body weight over your feet to increase your center of gravity. So explain about differences between technical and non-technical travel. We talked about a whole bunch of different types of technical travel that you just need to be aware of. Describe the importance of route and pace as they relate to walking technique. Talked about alternatives to confront when going through thick brush. Talked about crossing a fast moving stream or river. If you do not have the training, I recommend that you don't do that. If you do work around fast moving streams and rivers a lot, if you are not already, please consider buying a throw bag. And I'll try to put that into that goodie link list I said I was going to make at some point. So if somebody does fall in the river, you can throw them a rope bag and try to get them to safety. Any questions?
Nope, I don't have any.
Okay. All right. Able to see the screen okay?
Yep, it's good.
Awesome. All right. We're going to be talking about the basics of tracking. Understand this is a bare bones. There are a number of individuals, and I've mentioned a couple of them when we were talking about them in the last week or two. There are some major tracking nerds, just like canine nerds, and rope rescue nerds. There's some people that seriously dive into this stuff, and they are worth their weight in gold. We're going to talk about all these definitions. We're going to define these definitions, which is going to be talking about shoe stuff. And we're talking about some sign cutting techniques. This is the PowerPoint stuff when we actually meet in person or when we do our thing later on. We will talk a little more on this with the hands-on stuff, and this will bring some stuff together. And talk about keep using a point person and flankers. All right. Tracking and investigate a strategy and operational tactic. So strategy, big picture, and operations, tactic at the so strategies like the 5,000 foot level and tactics like from you to 5 feet out kind of operations. If you utilize this, it can give the subject a much better chance of survival, assuming that you do not have canine or some other resources as well. As I've been trying to harp this entire course, just because you have one type of resource does not mean that you can't have overlapping resources. So if you have a workable track or trail and you have a tracker, or you have somebody who wants to give it a shot, go for it. While other people are searching ahead, are searching the flanks and doing hasty team stuff, you have one person continually check the track. If you got canine or drones and stuff, yeah, sure, get them out in the air. But at the same time, hey, devote one or two people to properly track from the vehicle. Because if you lose them further up downstream or up the trail, hopefully that person, by the time they catch up and by the time you start to realize, hey, we're starting to have some difficulties now, something changed, hopefully they can give you a change in direction of travel or can confirm, oh no, they kept on going. Story's been printed on the ground. You want to become track aware searchers. You need to learn how to read it. The people who got patience and can kind of continuously work through this process tend to be a lot more efficient at this. We want to have an inquisitive mind, good observation skills, good field craft skills, and this is all the stuff that the trackers feel that you should have. Also, knowledge on local wildlife and plant life can also help so you can understand, well, hey, somebody just I got a footprint here in the sand and all of a sudden they're in different type of vegetation. You understand what you're looking at and what that plant's supposed to look like if it's not disturbed. Tracker or print is an impression left of a person who traveled through it. These tracks can be complete, so you got the full footprint. It can be a partial, or it could be less than partial, but hey, we could kind of identify things off of that. Tracking is the process of following these signs or tracks left by somebody. Sign is evidence that change from the natural landscape. Sign cutting is just a simple process of looking for those signs in an established area, preferably from a starting point to where we could find individuals. Um, I've known people in search and rescue that they will, if they hike a lot, and they will go to some common hiking spots and they find a trailhead that is in a dirt parking lot. They will sometimes be like, hey, I'm going to go to some random car. Hey, there's some footprints. And they start literally tracking that owner down and they will track all the way down. And next thing they know, they come to the family of three having a little picnic in the woods. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry. I'm just being a weirdo. I'm with search and rescue and I was practicing. I just tracked you from your vehicle. That happens a lot. But once you do that a few times, then you start to really build up confidence of, oh, I can actually really track somebody because you go from that's like practicing with canine search and getting like that proper, third party blind. Hey, you have this 1 acre to search. What's in there? I don't know. Is it above ground, below ground? What am I dealing with? I don't know. Search this acre. Tell me if there's anything there. How good are you? And just picking up someone. Um, I also know canine tracker trailers who will do the same thing hiking and they'll practice and just find a random person who are out hiking, find their car, have that used as a scent starting point, and try to track them down. Same thing. Da 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 da. Oh hey, I just found a family of three. Hey, do you own the white Honda Odyssey that's back at the? Oh well, yes. Oh my gosh, how did you know that? But especially down in your neck of the woods in the Four Corners, with hiking is very popular, and you got a lot of those dirt conditions. This is something very easy to do next time you go hiking. And like I said, either you're gonna love it, or all of a sudden you're gonna be like, David has ruined hiking for me. All right, so a complete impression, you can see the whole print. Partial, you can't see the whole thing for some reason or another. Identifiable, you can see certain characteristics. So in this footprint here, and this is a great one, we got your toe, we got your heel, and we got our tread pattern here. And later on in the next couple slides, it will talk to you about what parts to document. So here's a question to you. Okay. So you just found this beautiful footprint, right? And for whatever reason, it's right by the vehicle, and you think it's our individual. Um, how would you describe this over the radio back to mission base, to your command post?
That it looks like a work boot or hiking boot. Give them the size. And that it's a full imprint. It's not partial.
Beautiful. That's all great information to pass on. How are you telling their size?
Hopefully I have my ruler with me or
Good, good. You knew that. You didn't fall for that. Exactly. You give in dimensions. Oh, that looks like a 9.5 boot. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. And as anybody knows, especially with boot sizes, my little Smurf feet, I wear about a size down on boots than I do from my running shoes.
Ah,
And so it's like, yeah, I wear little Smurf running shoes, but then if I get a boot, I go down a half a step to a full step a lot of the times. And then, okay, if I'm wearing my big fancy firefighter station boot, that's great. I can use a wildland. I can do all that stuff. That's a big heavy boot. It's super insulated, but it's super insulated. So even though you might have gotten a report from my family saying, "Oh, he wears a size 8 boot," little freaking Hobbit Smurf feet. But on the flip side, you're like, "Oh, that boot size is too big. That's clear not wrong." Well, if you found a track and it's coming from my truck, maybe you should still work it and not just brush it off, right? Um,
yeah.
a good technique that some tracker schools will tell you, and something to consider for your search and rescue team, is those guys who are the track ninjas and nerds and all that stuff. They'll find a part of the boot, usually either on the toe or on the heel, and they'll have everybody cut it. And so, like, you see how there's an imprint here, right? And you get that uh little spot right here. They would cut this part, so all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, that doesn't look like the rest of the boots out here. And so they'll have the team all do the same cut. So while they're out searching, they won't accidentally start following a searcher.
Mm-hmm.
And just a technique that some people do. Science, be aware, a human drops, over 3,000 times per mile, and usually takes a step, or most people's adult human stride is 18 to 20 inches roughly. Again, this is all entry level stuff, so anybody who has taken some of those advanced tracking courses may be like, wait a minute, Fernando told me something slightly different. Those guys are going way more in depth and going way more nerd out. This is just a basic so that in a pinch you have a tool to help find somebody, right? Nevertheless, a novice tracker, you can still see a lot. You can substantially reduce the search area by trying to get you that direction of travel. Hey, that person left the trailhead. Okay, where did he go? There's a search that they just called off down in Missoula. I think a 33-year-old lady. Her vehicle was found, and no one knows where she went. And she's at the entrance in this little area on the outskirts of Missoula in Montana. Um, if you follow that trail long enough, that actually opens up into a wilderness area. And from that little spot, even though you're on the outskirts of town, you throw a stone and you got bears, you have mountain lions, and you can go into a lot of different directions without running into people, houses, and things. And so by being able to track a little bit and at least try to get you some sort of direction to travel could dramatically speed up and increase the success of a search. Natural track traps or cutting areas are areas like wet sand along the river that have a lot of things that are going to leave these beautiful imprints. Okay, and there should be a slide next. We'll be talking about how you can reset a track trap. Jump tracking is more of an advanced skill. You want to practice the basics and go step by step by step by step. But if let's say you're working in a four-person team and you got told, hey, I want you guys to track. We got a track coming from the truck. We have identified it. We have circled it. We have flag taped it out. And it's right by the truck. We're 95% certain this is our person. Okay. And so two of you might be doing the step by step by step method. Meanwhile, somebody might be jumping ahead. Hey, we're going to go up 10 feet and try to find the same footprints. Okay, he's here. He's still going out this way. Okay, now we're going to go another 10 feet. Okay, yeah, we still see the same footprint. We're going to keep going like that and they're hoping to get lucky. Meanwhile, you're doing the reassurance with your two-person team and going by the step by step by step. And as they're saying here, this involves guesswork. There's a little bit of skill. Really, there's no skill, and you're doing a whole bunch of luck. And so they say that, hey, they don't recommend to do this, especially if someone's life is depending on it. Right? It's not a sure-proof method. Doesn't mean that somebody else can't be doing that while somebody's doing the sure-proof method, but just be very mindful of the amount of resources you have and what you are doing. And as I was just talking about, what NASAR recommends, especially for beginner trackers, do the step-by-step method. It takes a while. It can be kind of interesting, but it's very effective when you do that. You proceed no further than the next visible track. You're going to set up a hiking stick, which we'll talk about on the hands-on day. Either your tracking pole, your little hiking pole that you can collapse and extend out, or your Gandalf style hiking staff that I've mentioned in previous classes, like San Luis Obispo Sheriff Department. They recommend to their team members to have that full on traditional Boy Scout Gandalf hiking staff because they'll set it up for tracking, but then they'll also use it for various other things, including moving gear. They'll strap them together to help make a litter. And so there are pluses and minuses to using either method. Just do what you feel most comfortable with. Okay, backering. This is basically what they're talking about is you're doing by the step-by-step method and all of a sudden tracks stop because maybe the train changes, maybe he was going into a creek or something, or you lost a trail. And so that's usually a method if you track, you mark, heavily identify your last sure track, and then you go out a little ways to try to reestablish it. Um, Tracking trailing canines will do a similar thing where if the person turned or whatnot, they'll stop and they'll cast out their dog to try to reestablish and like, oh, actually, they're going over this way now. Very similar method. The dog's got the nose, and so they're able to go a lot quicker, and they're following the stuff that we can't see. Um, but some of the basic kind of concept of what they're doing and we're doing, there's a lot of little kind of crossover here. Yeah. Again, I try to use this infrequently, and they're saying you shouldn't be given permission to do this. All right, parts of the feet. Okay, we know this is just bringing everybody to common terminology and what in the world of search and rescue and tracking, this is their definitions. Okay, so some of this I know seems common sense, but they're making sure everybody understands these definitions. So the heel, it's like right back here. The lateral, situated from the middle. So it's the part between the heel and the toes. The phalanges, for my EMTs in the room and one of those first responders, you would know that as phalanges is the medical term for toes. Your forefoot, larger part of the foot, forward of the ankle. Movement of the foot and the leg. You can see a couple different patterns that humans typically have. Equipment for tracking, clothing. Hey, it should be just like everybody else, deployable gear. They highly recommend broad brimmed hats, not just to protect the eyes, but you can utilize it as a sunshade when tracking when the sun is high. So just because you were tracking and you got this beautiful, very easily to identify track 8 o'clock in the morning, start of the search. Okay, cool. Hey, we got this. I'm working this search, and you're a couple hours into it, and all of a sudden the sun's right overhead, and all of a sudden, hey, where'd all my tracks go? You can hold your brim out. Do I have a hat out here? No, no. You can hold your hat out and create shadow to kind of change the light to help you see the tracks better. And then for an extra step, while holding your hat out, creating that shadow, you can get a mirror to just your little signal mirror, and you can reflect light out into that shadow, which sounds kind of crazy, but you're trying to get that light to get that angle of attack so you can see the proper shadows and the indents of your footprints. And all this, the key thing with this is practice. Walking or signaling stick, already mentioned about that before. Should be at least 40 inches long or at least adjustable to 40 inches. You should have at least two O-rings, rubber bands. I've used rubber bands. My daughters, when they were smaller and they used to have all those little colorful hair bands, it drive them nuts because I steal them all and I would throw those off and I'll use the different. My little ADHD brain loved it because I had my markings on my hiking stick. I used the different colors to signify different points. And in my brain, that just made things a little bit easier. That might be more confusing for some, but for me, that made things easier. A measuring device, preferably a measuring tape. You're gonna can measure and print the stride. You want to document everything. You want to put. Yes, you can take a photo. We have modern phones, sure, but you should also be writing information down as well, so you have a backup as well. small notepad and pencil, um, and your FUNSAR books, both the older one and the newer one, depending on which one you have. They should have a basic template for writing a foot pattern or a shoe pattern down. Trail tape, also known as flagging tape, you can corner off evidence of sign, help prevent from trampling from somebody just that deputy who's not paying attention and just walks right over your beautiful track that you're like, hey, keep it here. And then you turn around to go grab your gear and you come back and that deputy would completely clueless just stumbled all over your track and now you lost your track. Like, okay, you can mark that out, prevent that. Some of the new flagging tape, they do make biodegradable ones. So if you leave it on the ground, it's rapid biodegradable. I usually keep a pack that carries two colors just so I have differences. There are ones that have reflective material in it. You can go absolutely crazy with some of this stuff. There's no um, standard color system unless you make it for your team. So go wild on that. Another technique that I've seen done, which some people like, some people don't, is I've seen people bring out spray paint or especially the contractor spray paint that biodegrades a little quicker if for those of us being nature minded. And no reason why you can't just when you're marking your footprints, which we'll show here in the next couple slides, absolutely no reason if you have that biodegradable spray paint, instead of marking it with your stick, you're marking it with the spray paint and you're going step by step. This is the left, this is a right, this is a full, whatever you need to, and you can keep tracking that. Flashlights, as we're talking about before, you should have that always. But like I said, besides having a reflective mirror, which is usually really great, and you can do that, another method would be to use a flashlight while holding your hat out to try to get those angles of attack so you can see your footprints a little bit better. And I talked about your mirror and your standard signal mirror that you should have on you in your kit anyway will work just fine. Okay, don't advance to the last print until you've found the next one. Whenever possible, try not to destroy evidence. Use this and use your stick. Your tracks and signs are considered evidence until proven otherwise. Um, I mentioned earlier in an earlier class about my big search where all the spontaneous volunteers showed up, and I found very clear track and track that matched the description of what the individual was wearing at the time that he went missing. But I couldn't rule it out because the whole area had been contaminated. But if I recall correctly, we still GPSed it, we still documented, we still took photos of it. And it's saying, hey, light is incredibly important, so plays in a vital role. You can track at night. Again, that goes back to where those flashlights come in handy. That is a little more of a advanced practice, but I highly recommend at least once a year, if not more, taking your team out, especially if you got new searchers, and be like, "Hey, we're gonna for Thursday night meeting. It's in the fall. It's a little darker here. We're all gonna meet at Sally's Trailhead over here. Okay, and you get your whole team out there and be like, "Hey, our team member Bob is missing right now, and here's his vehicle. What are you gonna do?" And you just have them try and be like, "Oh, but it's night." And I'm like, "Well, let's see how far we can get. Let's see if we can track our friend the quarter mile down the road. You know, doesn't need to be too hard." but just do little drills like that, and especially to the people who are the canine handlers or the horse guys, and people who are like, oh, I'm usually command pill. Ah, come on out here. It's going to be a short one, but it'll be a challenging little exercise to get you guys to think and to practice these skills. And once you start to get in the habit of it, some people really pick on, and it's a great skill to have. As I was talking about earlier, you have the indentations in the ground, and where that angle of attack from where the sun is can absolutely change your view. Lower angle can cause shadows that bring out the details more. That's saying if you're standing up and you can't see anything, get close to the ground. It might change your perspective of the trails. Likewise, these two photos of are the same. It's the same spot. Let's say this is from upstream or up trail, and if you're kind of keen, okay, we can kind of see the footprints here, but from the other angle, because the sun, as I'm guessing, is over here, it's probably early in the morning, and it's coming from the east, we can now see our footprints way more defined. And so as the lighting conditions change, you might have to literally move your body to kind of figure out your best way to find it. Tracking at night, like I talked about, it is a skill. It is a thing. Some people prefer to be tracking at night because they can control the light source. So when they're tracking their steps, cool. My sun's always in front of me. It is always at this angle. I have seen some people do some wild stuff like make attachments or 3D print things and put a flashlight on their tracking stick. And so they'll just prop it up, and so it's always at the same height. I've seen that. Um, but again, that goes down into more of the advanced stuff and advanced practicing. We talked about our at least two rubber bands. What you're trying to measure is the distance from the heel to the pointy end of the toe. Or excuse me, from the heel of the rear print um, to the heel of the front print. And so you're trying to go heel of the initial one, and then, oh, hey, here's my next one. So that's your rubber band set at a very long length. And then the next one with that is going to be a shorter one. Hey, the heel of the one solid print that you have a really good print of, and you know that, okay, my next rubber band's about here. And so when you're searching and moving your stick back and forth on the ground, wait a minute, I've been doing this. I'm kind of on zombie mode. Am I still following the right footprint? And you can check that and be like, nope, nope, it's the same size, or roughly the same size. Don't get, if it's a millimeter off, don't panic. Stuff will shift on you, dirt will move. But it's like, hey, it's the same size. That looks like my same print. Yeah, I'm still doing good. Um, it's not an obvious, we didn't start following a different print, but obvious, or it's not obvious that you start following a separate print. It looks like we're still doing good. And then that further one, which should be in the next slide, we'll talk about, okay, here's our first print. Okay, and we take our stick and we go back and forth about 45 degrees. And somewhere in that should be our next footprint. And then from there it goes footprint, 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 and you're marking them as you go along. It is a slow process, but is very effective. And that's what I was just talking to you about. Okay. If you want to, you can even get a third rubber band to measure the width of the heel. That used to be taught back in the day, but using just two bands is more than appropriate. And this is just showing a visual representation of what I was talking about, that 45 or really 60 degrees is typically where you're going to see your next footprint if someone's walking in a straight line. And then if they turn, usually somebody takes a footprint from your stride, and it all of a sudden, hey, the toe's going to start facing this way, and you know you got to change in direction. Okay. In those advanced tracking courses, they'll go into, you can tell how they stopped. You can actually see where they stopped and looked around. They spinned. Again, these guys get way more into it, but this is supposed to be just the basics. You should label the tracks left or right. This says circle them, they're fully identifiable. You might want to do that at first. If you're tracking somebody for a couple miles, maybe not, you might slow start to do that. But the book answer is you're circling every fully identifiable one. You'll see that in the next slide. And I was talking about before, you're going to mark that with your stick. I also mentioned before about at the very least, maybe either spray painting it, especially with that biodegradable paint, or hey, I'm just doing a colored dot next to your footprint. So if you can't see your steps, you can look back and see dot, 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 dot along the way. It's just added ideas for you and your team. So, hey, we got a full print. Cool. We have a partial print, so it's not fully circled. And we know that, hey, this is a left one. Oh, hey, the next step up here is a heel. And we know it should be a right one. And then our next footprint, or here, let's go back this way. So, hey, we got our full footprint. Cool. The next step, that's a right. The next one, hey, here's our clearly our footprint, same size and everything. That's a left, and it's not complete, so we got a half and a little hash going off to the left. And our next footprint, just because the ground's changing and it's not leaving the great prints, we got just the heel marker, and we know that's a right. That's important. So if you're going left, right, and all of a sudden, like, wait, I got like 3 right feet all in a row, something's wrong. That's why you're trying to do that, is to show you and show your team members of like, wait a minute, I got a right, and now I got a left, and then I got a left in very short sequence. And it's like, okay, what's going on here? Something's wrong. Um, and like I said, maybe that person stopped and they kind of took a half step and kind of looked around. Maybe something like that happened. Oh, hey, I'm at a trailhead, and you can see him ponder and look left and right and go, which way did he go, George? Where do we want to go? You can start to see some of that action, but that's why it's important to mark left and right when you're doing your footprints. A proper tracking team is a 3-person group when possible. I know sometimes resources that's not available, but you have a primary point person, and then you have 2 people who are flanking, who are on either side. Those people on either side are supporting the point person. They are keeping aware in case they see the footprints start to go off one way or another. Hopefully, they can identify it. They're also paying attention to things because, as the main tracker, and they're on their hands and knees and in front of them, going step by step by step, they're keeping alert for potential hazards. They're dealing with the radio, so the person who's fumbling around with the tracking, they can just focus on that. They can also consult with situations if you have been tracking for a very long track and that person's starting to get tired, or if, hey, they have bad knees like me, and they forgot their knee pads, which, by the way, if you're going to be a hardcore tracker, you might consider grabbing some knee pads. And if that's, hey, I've been doing this for a while, my back's starting to lock up on me. Hey, that person is as skilled as you are. Hey, tap out with them for 20 minutes and do rotation. Then, hey, now you're the flanker. Now they're the point person. And on a worst case scenario, if you get to that trailhead and it looks like you got the same footprint going left and you have the same footprint going right, worst case scenario, you can split up to try to work both trails, going on both trails. Obviously, that's not ideal. You want to stick together, but in a pinch, you can do that. And here's examples: point person, step by step by step, and you got your 2 flankers. And here's just a 2-person tracking team doing their step-by-step method in some looks like mud cow resting area, looks like on some little farmer ranch kind of area. The point person stays behind the last track found, uses the stick as we've talked about before. The flankers keep from obliterating any additional signs ahead of them and keeping an eye out and trying to make sure that we don't accidentally step on our last sign, destroying evidence. And the point person should be coordinating the efforts of the team. But like I said, if the person's on the ground messing with things, have somebody else deal with the radio if there's a lot of radio traffic for some reason. Watch out for confusing situations. The flankers can act as safeties, especially in areas that, hey, we have an active search going on in the area, but the area is not closed to hikers. That happens a lot of times, and people are like, oh, you got a search going on? Huh, that sucks. Cool. And they'll go off about their day and not even worry about stuff. And so if you see somebody coming up and like, hey, we're following a track, can you stay to the right of the trail? That you should be okay. It seems like we're on the left for the most part. Deal with people on the trail. Um, and I was talking about your back starting to lock up and fun things that come with aging as well. Your trackers are probably going to have to rest on regular intervals. And then, hey, if you get that call out and we're trying to track somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning and that person's worked all day and they've been up for 20 something hours at that point, hey, maybe your point person or your tracking team might not be as efficient as if they had an 8 hour night of sleep. Detecting sign, as we talked about before, that's the process of looking for those visual clues. Additionally, the key thing here is if you're in a wilderness area, you should be looking for things that don't belong there. And just kind of looking at what we got here. We got at least two distinct footprints right here. We got a big tread that looks like it's either a car tire or a wide-bodied bicycle. Oh, looks like there's at least two different bicycle tracks going on here. You got these tracks going on here, and this is starting to split off. So that tells me, again, additional bikers. And that's just looking in here. Oh, hey, somebody has a dog or some sort of canine that's either following them. So that's just looking from a photo. And some terminology for your clues. Outline, shape, contrast, and color. Your color is important too. When you start practicing trails and whatnot, you can actually start to determine the age of your track based on how the dirt's sun bleached and whatnot, and that will come in with time and if you take advanced courses. Here's one of those track identification cards or papers that I told you when you first got your first official, hey, here's our footprint. It's right by the door of this truck of a hunter. It looks like nobody else has been parking here. We're pretty certain this is our individual. You want to write down all that information as possible. There's absolutely no reason to, hey, I'm going to take a photo of the footprint and my measuring tape and my card when I'm all done filling it out and send that back to the command post. But at the very least, you have your reference in case your phone dies, and you also can write down your measurements, which is also going to be key. So again, if you've been tracking the person for 4 hours and you're starting to look cross-eyed, Hey, wait a minute, are we still following the right shoe? This looks a little different. No, no, it's the same size. It's the same width and length and everything else. It looks like about the same. And you want to document everything. Um, oh, I got a question for you. So, is there a time when your stride, so that's your spacing between footprints, is there a time other than they stop? Is there a time that your stride might change?
Um, I would say if they're getting tired.
Exactly. They're getting tired. Um, they're starting to, the right leg started to limp, and you can see the foot starting to go off to the right. Those little factors. I mentioned before that I was an idiot, and as an Air Force guy, decided to jump out of a C-130 with a bed sheet. On one of my jumps, did not go exactly as planned, and I severely broke my right leg, which is why I wear a knee brace. As a result, gee whiz, if you ever go looking for me, you should be able to notice because when my leg and everything healed and they put titanium rods and stuff like that, my foot when I first got out of surgery was pointed out about 45 degrees out to the right. And over time and a lot of physical therapy, it's still there. It's mostly straight, but especially when I get tired and whatnot, I'll start to slowly go off to the right as I go more and more. That's important to just gee whiz know, because then it makes my footprints even more distinctive. Gee whiz, hey, his right foot is always off to the right a little bit, and so that might make your job easier as you're tracking somebody like me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep. And we already talked about this. We're going to communicate to others. We're going to use common terminology. We're going to use measurements, millimeters or inches or however you want to say it, but say something that everybody knows and not, oh, it looks like a 6.5 double Y. No, you're you're measuring it out. Again, you're not guessing the shoe size. Now, I would say it would be appropriate. We have found a small child's footprint because it's about yay big. I would say that would be appropriate if you're looking for a small child over the radio. I would then measure it and relay that information. But I feel that that would be descriptive of, hey, we just found a small child's footprint. We haven't found any footprints. We're in the middle of the wilderness area, and this is probably the only kid for 5 miles in any direction. I'm going to go on a limb and I'm going to follow the footprints. To just good search and rescue habits. Try to keep vehicles and foot traffic to a minimum. If you got your main path from the trailhead is going up and you're trying to track, and all of a sudden the sheriff's trying to bring all of his cool ATVs and UTVs up the road, and he's making a whole bunch of dust and he's going right over where you're trying to track, well, that could be a problem. So yell at the command post to be like, hey, tell these guys to stay off the trail, go on the shoulder, something. Sometimes, hey, I know you guys are trying to get resources up the road, but try to voice your concerns to other people who might not be thinking like you are, especially if you're trying to properly track somebody. Sign cut the perimeter. So look everywhere to try to figure out what you got going on. Of course, if you have a popular tour site and the person's car has been here for 3 days because no one realized that they were missing, yeah, that's going to cause issues. But still, hey, let's evaluate the area and find whatever clues we can. Are a lot of those clues are probably going to be random tourists and people out for the day? Yeah, that's going to be a reality. But nevertheless, let's see what we got to work with. And this is talking about if this is kind of a bad to look at the map. So from what I could tell from here, so the last known location, the trailhead's like over here right off the map. I don't know if you can see that. And it looks like they put on the map their search areas that they want to square out. And my guess is they have a number of trails and they're trying to slingshot trackers who know what they're looking for to go to these common areas further upstream or up the trail to determine, hey, get to this point. We're going to bring you up here somehow, drive you, fly you, whatever. Go tell us if you could find a footprint that's um, 16 and a half inches long and is a hiking boot, and here's a photo of the footprint. See if you can find this up here. No, no. Oh, hey, I found something out here. Okay, now we divert more resources over here, hoping that hey, we got a direction of travel and we just kind of sped things up that he's probably not in this area. Now we're gonna move our priority further up the trail, if that makes sense. But like they're saying here, use it limitedly. And the reality is, you need like barriers like cliffs and thick brush. Here, it looks like they're using drainage, and there's probably trails up here. This has a point of interest, and I can't quite read it, but hey, there's a point of interest that maybe that person went up to this point. There's a trail coming up here, so let's go further down the trail and see if we get lucky and we can pick it up again. While nevertheless, you still got that three-person team going step by step by step back here. You're just trying to speed things along by, hey, I got a second crew. I'm going to send you guys up here. Go see if we get lucky. But if you have nothing but just a flat field, that's not really going to be a good strategy, is what they're trying to say. And when in doubt, go back to the fundamentals. Um, I love all this mountain rescue. I love repelling off of stupid things and making cool little mechanical advantage things and all this advanced rescue ninja stuff. But when things aren't going right, go back to the basics. When you're tired, you're exhausted, it's 2 in the morning, nothing seems to be working right. Go back to the basics. Deal with the facts, deal with the basic things of trying to find the person. The last thing they didn't, I don't know what happened to the photo. There should have been another photo, and it might be in another PowerPoint, but there's a photo of Border Patrol. Um, you actually probably have seen a lot of the Border Patrol stuff. You notice that there's a big dirt road right by the border fence that everyone keeps talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, that's there for multiple reasons. That's there for access, that's there for clearing, but the Border Patrol trains their members and their agents in tracking. And they will send somebody, and there's a photo here in one of these slides, and I thought it was in this one. They will drag, oh, that looks like a chain link fence behind the vehicle, like somebody's trying to even out all the dust and stuff on a baseball field, and they will drive that daily, and then they'll come driving back a few hours later and see if there's any new footprints. They will intentionally do that to try to box people in, and they'll have roads and fire roads, they'll do the same method, and they're like, hey, the only person who's been on here has been another patroller, and now all of a sudden I got footprints going across my path. And so, like, hey, I got footprints right next to the fence, and they're going from south to north. That next little path up, about a half mile up the road. Hey, you go check that area. Hey, there's nothing over here. So you know that, hey, our people that we're looking for is in that half mile basically square. And now you can start to confine your search. You can do the same thing in the world of search and rescue, especially in your neck of the woods. You can use a lot of this strategy. So something to keep in the back of your mind.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. Again, we talked about all these definitions. Talked about different parts of the feet. We talked about what sign cutting and our tracking sticks. Talk about labeling. Why is that important to mark them left, right, and whole. Talked about what flankers can do and how they can help. Any questions, madame?
Nope, no questions.
Is this good stuff?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good stuff. Here, I'm going to turn the recorder off and then